So, you want to start an online fitness brand. And I mean, why wouldn't you? Online fitness content has exploded in popularity in recent years. Everybody and their granny seems to have started a TikTok or Instagram page documenting every single step of their fitness journey in the hopes of inspiring others to do the same. Some have even found success doing this. Figureheads like Sam Sulek or the Trend Twins boast millions of followers between them. There's an ever-growing market for fitness-related content, and it seems like it's going to stay that way for a while. So, naturally you want a piece of the pie, right? Naturally you want to get in on the action and share in the success that this massive new online trend might be able to offer you. But of course you can't just start uploading footage of yourself working out and hope that's enough, can you? After all, that's what everyone else is doing, just starting and figuring it out as they go. No, that isn't enough. You need to go in with a game plan. You need to know how to grow an audience. And that's where I come in. You see, I've developed the definitive step-by-step process explaining how to guarantee that these prospective gym bros are dedicated to your every word, no matter how outlandish or too good to be true it may seem. Not only that, but by following these simple instructions, you'll guarantee that these young boys feel like they need your content in order to feel like life is worth living at all. And if you can get them to that point, you're guaranteed success for life. So, allow me to tell you what you can do to create a successful fitness brand with a dedicated following. Allow me to tell you how to radicalize a gym bro. So let's say you want your own personal army of big boys who will be at your beck and call until the day you die, and hopefully after that too. Where do you start? You might think that you'd be best off going to the local gym, finding the biggest, toughest, meanest looking guy you can find, and handing him a goodie bag full of hormones. And while I'm sure you guys would be on good terms if you did that, it wouldn't really work for a few reasons. First of all, it was too expensive. But more importantly, it's not going to work because that guy already has an idea of who he is as a person and a reason he began working out in the first place. If you really want to get in someone's head and make sure that they're hanging on your every word, then you need to get in before that point. You need to be the reason that they start working out with the expectations they have to begin with. You need to get them before they've ever set foot in a gym for the first time. And there's no better way to do this than with a fitness-centered social media page. Now, if you really want to give them a foundation from which to start lifting, you have to target something they're already familiar with. A meme page is the most accessible, but it won't work if these guys don't have any knowledge of the in-jokes that a meme page is composed of. Instead, what you want to do is show them what they might be able to achieve if they started working out, kind of like an aspirational highlight reel. Now remember, you don't actually have to be sure that the results you show are possible or achievable in a healthy way. Research and vetting might limit your content and potential reach, so it's best to avoid those wherever possible. Your job is to have a platform, not to be responsible with it. You'll want to present as an impartial, objective reporter to the goings-on in the fitness industry. Don't offer your own opinion, just highlight the simple facts of each lift, like the age of the person you're talking about and how much they're lifting. You can even say that they're natural if they claim it in their bio. Remember, all you're there to do is share the end results, not how they got there. Then all you have to do is work out the rest of your brand. Having a recognizable name can do wonders for your reach, so make it short and sweet, something that's memorable but also communicates the concept of your brand. If you're talking about the up-and-coming next generation of fitness influencers, something like Rising Lifters should do the trick. That sounds official enough. Then you just need a sleek logo of your brand's initials to really pop and grab people's attention. And there you have it. With just a few sleek design choices and no effort spent quality controlling your content, you'll be able to reach potentially millions of teenagers who've never set foot in a gym before and who have no frame of reference to judge what actually realistic progress looks like. They'll even have something to aspire to, considering that thanks to your page, they're watching their high school peers set world records every week. Don't even worry about the well-documented male body image crisis that a lot of younger generations are currently experiencing thanks to pages just like yours, nor the rampant steroid epidemic that's destroying millions of young men's bodies every year. Remember, you're not the one advertising steroids. All of the athletes you feature say they're natural, and I can't think of a single reason anybody would lie about steroid usage. And that's it. Thanks to your brand that's now followed by well over 100,000 people, you can be the reason these teenagers start lifting weights in the first place. Not only that, but you've brought them into the gym with a completely realistic set of expectations of what they can achieve naturally, and certainly haven't reinforced any unhealthy expectations whatsoever. There's no way this can go wrong. But let's say for some reason that you don't have an easy enough time motivating these kids to hate themselves, want to improve themselves by showing them what they could achieve if they did things naturally. What do you do then? Well, the answer's rather simple. You motivate them using somebody else. If there's one surefire way to motivate anybody to do something that doesn't involve doing it for themselves, it's a negative perception of another person, or maybe even of themselves depending on how you target it. Now, the rise of the fat acceptance movement in recent years is perfect for this. Not only does it provide you with an infinitely replenishing source of content for your cringe compilations, but you can basically never look bad in comparison. Look at how well this method has worked for channels like Obese to Beast. Sure, they offer some unnecessary extras like actually going to the gym and demonstrating their own knowledge, but you don't have to bother with any of that. Remember, all you have to do is look better in comparison to the person you're talking about. If you aren't fat and the person you're reacting to is, then congratulations, you've already won. You can see this in full effect with the following video by Ite Shechcher on Instagram reacting to another content creator, Lady Dekaru.
Our arms jiggle, we don't have a tie gap, and this is what our tummies look like, and here's what we're eating tonight. Chicken?
Homemade fries still needs to be in the oven, okay? It's not ready yet.
Earth and cabbage salad?
We still need to add mayo.
No matter what your body looks like,
Your body needs food.
please eat today.
We love you.
So cringe.
I don't know about you, but my eyes have truly been opened by these deep insights. You know, the great thing about making content like this is that you don't even need to have things like context or basic literacy skills to make it. For instance, it doesn't even matter that this creator, Lady Dekaru, runs an eating disorder recovery account, and that's why they're saying that no matter how you look, your body needs food. Why do you need to care about that? All you have to do is be less fat than them, and you're sorted. If you play your cards right, this will give you free license to use the exact same talking points in a follow-up video months after this one.
Come here. This is what my tummy looks like.
And this is what my tummy looks like. And this is what our self-care of the day is.
No matter what you did,
Or didn't do today, you're allowed to take care of yourself.
whatever that means to you,
So,
please eat today.
and happy self-care. We love you.
This is so cringe.
And your audience, primed to accept this type of content by an increasing pushback against fat activism, won't even remember the first time you were called out for misrepresenting Lady's message, nor will they notice that you've said nothing of substance in either of these two videos. You basically can't make a wrong move. Now, okay, it's one thing to boost your own credibility by weaponizing disdain for other people, but how does that translate to getting your audience into the gym? And to that I say, you really haven't been looking at the bigger picture, have you? What have we learned from Ite's page? It's not enough to simply pressure somebody into improving themselves for themselves. You need to make them look down on the alternative, on the people who don't work out. For instance, look at Ite's own fitness. His first video on Lady was made just 10 days after his first time in a gym.
Love it that I'm only doing this for 2-3 days and I'm already getting this sort of comment. So listen to you, man. Thanks. First time at the gym.
And that's the beauty of online fitness culture that people like Ite represent. You don't even have to have your own fitness accomplishments to run a successful page anymore. You just have to be better than somebody else. Remember, it's not any of that sissy shit like health or self-improvement or discipline that you're trying to market to these teenage boys in your audience. It's a power fantasy. But an important question arises regarding what comes after this point. So you've shown these boys the definitely realistic end result that they should go in expecting to reach, and you've given them a reference of what not to be, something to avoid becoming at all costs. Now they're working out for what are obviously the right reasons. You've put them in the gym, and now you can rest easy knowing that these young boys are going to grow up into confident, strong men. Maybe their newfound confidence will even help them meet a nice girl, and they can finally learn to be loved and accepted for who they are, and not to seek validation or superiority from others. Wrong! What are you, stupid? The last thing you should do is let these teenage boys be happy. If you do that, who's going to watch all of your videos tearing down random people who are recovering from an eating disorder? If you let these teenage boys become happy, they might start thinking for themselves, or rejecting the mindset you gave them that made them start working out in the first place. We can't let them lose focus that easily. What, you think these boys are going to use their confidence to meet girls? Let me tell you something about girls. The only time you should be concerned with women in your fitness content is when you're using them as motivation to keep working out. Thankfully, I've devised a method that means that no matter how close your audience happens to be to these females, you can still turn them back towards the gym. Remember, we're targeting teenage boys here. Chances are they've had little to no experience talking to girls, or maybe they have but it hasn't gone well. Now, most of you probably view rejection as the natural extension of being an awkward teenager. You probably think that it's completely normal and nothing to worry about if your crush doesn't like you. But since we're trying to grow a platform here, we can't admit that. So we need to exploit these negative feelings that every young boy experiences and use them to our own personal benefit. Hey, it's for their own good. So let's say you're trying to help these boys get over their rejection or lack of being noticed. What can you do? Well, very simply, you can help them flip the dynamic that they've found themselves in. By this, I mean that you want to make these young men feel like they're the ones in control. So now instead of getting rejected by a girl they like, these boys can feel like they're the ones doing the rejecting. And what's great about this is that you don't even need a real woman to make this content. All you need to do is pick one of the many from your imagination to then frame as a temptress or seductress whose only purpose is to distract you from your newfound obsession with outlifting a negative self-image. And there you go. Now, instead of your audience being the ones who get rejected, they're rejecting, or more accurately, mogging, the dozens of imaginary women who approach them on a daily basis. Now, some of you might call this sour grapes, but me? I call that motivation. You can see this approach best with YouTuber/mindset coach GriffinMind, a content creator with just under 250,000 subscribers. His channel is filled to the brim with compilations of this exact type of content. When women get rejected by men, when men stop simping for women, when women thirst for men. It's extremely easy and profitable to make content like this too. All you need to do is take a single out of context clip from a variety of different creators and put your own spin on it. For example, this reel that Griffin reacts to in his video Gym Girl Humbled by Muscle Man, wherein a dastardly female tries to tempt this Chad alpha away from his workout.
Okay, how do you want me to do it? How I like it? Okay. Perfect. What? What?
I look like a potato.
I love French fries.
My man, setting those boundaries as you should.
And much like what I said with Ite's content earlier, you don't even need to worry about any of that context or truth that gets in the way of the power fantasy you're trying to sell your audience. You know, it doesn't even matter that this video is obviously staged, nor does it matter that these two people are a married couple who make fitness skits on their TikTok page, Dak Jitsu, and are role-playing in this video for some reason. Don't worry about any of that. Remember, what we're concerned with is turning young boys against women and into the gym, no matter what lengths we have to go to do it. And if you follow the instructions of pages like GriffinMind, you too can profit off the loneliness you encourage these young men and boys to endure. But of course, no matter how many men you try and get to stop liking women, simping for females, there's always going to be a few who slip through the cracks and actually start treating girls like human beings, God forbid. Maybe they'll even enter a loving and healthy relationship. Can you imagine anything worse? So naturally, we need to save young men from this horrible fate. Encouraging them to work out isn't enough in this case, they're already too far gone. If he's treating her like a human being, we're in desperate times. And desperate times often call for our most desperate and extreme measures. You have to poison their relationship. If you've played your cards right, those poor souls who have entered relationships will have seen a few of your videos pointing out the fickle nature of women. Maybe they even agreed with a lot of your points, but were stolen anyways by a particularly cunning female. She's different, he'll say. She's not like the rest of them. She's the one. And as much as it sickens me to see them so in love, this is useful. It means that he's watched enough videos of guys complaining about women to know what they're really like. Half the work is already done for us. Now, all we need to do is expand on that framework and convince him that she's going to cheat too. Not only that, you have to go into the most excruciating detail about how she's going to cheat in order to really drive that fact home. Let me show you one such content creator who's got this technique down to a T. This is Andrian Benowitz, better known by his Instagram and TikTok handle 7Andy7. Andrian has dedicated the last 8 months of his online fitness presence to this exact form of content, attempting to bring awareness to the true nature of women before it's too late, and save any of his viewers who are unlucky enough to have fallen into a healthy relationship. The truly impressive part of his online presence is how he's managed to grow such a large platform with such an economical form of content creation. By this, I mean that should you browse his social media page, you'll quickly notice that a lot of the clips in his videos are recycled between posts. There's maybe 15 clips maximum that you'll ever see on his page recycled again and again in a different order. And this is great because it means that all you have to do is film a ton of clips in bulk over 1 or 2 really good workouts, and then use them over and over again in order to launch a successful online career. Isn't that clever? The only thing you ever have to change is the caption, and if you're as resourceful as someone like Andrian, you should have no problem thinking up more ways to hate women, make motivational content to get these young lads into the gym. Take this post for instance, wherein he says you shouldn't trust a girl whose friends sleep around. This is what I mean when I talk about building upon the previous frameworks that we've already established. If you've convinced your audience of young men that 99% of women are temptresses with no morals, all you have left to do is convince him that the last person he has left is no different. And that's where content creators like Andrian come in. Of course, simply telling some boys that their girlfriends are going to cheat on them won't be enough in many instances, so you'll have to up the ante a bit. Luckily, Andrian has us covered yet again.
You're working your ass off, while another guy is messaging her saying, "He's so weird, why do you talk to him?" And she's saying, "Stop, be nice."
Now you're getting a bit more specific with it. Instead of gesturing towards her friends, you point out any male acquaintances that their girlfriends might have and direct their relationship insecurities onto him instead. If you've done a good enough job at making these young boys feel insecure around their peers, this should start doing the trick. You really want to start hammering home those insecurities that you planted earlier. That's how we're going to help these boys. And again, if exploiting that insecurity doesn't work, what do? You escalate.
While you beg her for a second chance, she's begging another man for a second round.
Now you're forcing these guys to think about their girlfriends fucking other dudes. That'll really motivate them to work out. And you don't even have to stop there. You can take it even further than that.
She's screaming his name into the pillow.
Now you're not only forcing them to think about their girlfriends fucking other dudes, you're forcing them to think of the exact position that they're cheating on them in. You're basically guaranteed to get into their heads at that point. Now, you may be thinking, Data Mail, isn't it a bit odd to force guys to think about their girlfriends fucking other dudes to motivate them to work out? And to that I would say, shut up! Thankfully, it appears that Andrian's efforts haven't been in vain. He's already inspired the next generation of lifters to spread this same message. For instance, this is Adam Stanislaw, an online content creator fresh to the scene. At just 18 years old, he's taken it upon himself to further spread awareness and motivation to his peers, with reels such as the following.
POV, you're finishing your meal while a skinny guy is finishing in her.
Yeah. He also follows Andrian's budget-friendly format of recycling footage, using the same video of himself eating canned tuna and white bread, but changing the caption each time. For instance,
"Stop thinking about her, she puts it back in for him when it slips out."
Fucking hell. Now, some of you might think that this isn't a good thing. Here's a kid with maybe one, if any, significant relationships under his belt who roleplays as a cuckold for his audience of over 5,000 people to try and motivate them to work out. You might be thinking that this kid has ruined his own life before it even properly started. But you just don't understand what we're trying to achieve here. The fact that we're ruining these boys' attitudes towards 50% of the population is actually a good thing. It means that we're reaching them at an age where we can have them focus on what's really important, and it doesn't matter how far you have to go to get them there. Thanks to people like Andrian and by extension Adam, we've basically guaranteed that the young men we've been able to reach will find it functionally impossible to view women as nothing more than sex objects who you can never have a healthy relationship with. If everything goes well, this should completely and irreversibly collapse their entire relationship and mental health along with it. And of course, once that happens, we'll be there waiting. And thus we come to the final step of this process. If you've followed my instructions so far, you'll have molded these young men into people who are incapable of maintaining a healthy relationship. Not only that, but you'll have convinced them that because of the true nature of women, that none of it is their fault. They'll feel like little more than victims of circumstance, or more specifically, victims of women. And that victimhood is what we're going to have to nurture in order to take the next step in this process. This, of course, being the revenge arc. The concept of the revenge arc is simple. You want to turn these young boys towards the gym as a means of getting revenge against their exes, who, if you've played your cards right, you've turned these boys against already. You want to weaponize self-improvement to give these boys some sense of control over their heartbreak. It's kind of similar to those mogging videos I already mentioned, except much more potent because there's genuine heartbreak tied up in it. Now, one of the dangers of relying on this method exclusively is that heartbreak is only temporary. Unless they're Andrian making hundreds of videos about a relationship that lasted 2 months, they're probably going to get over the breakup eventually. This is where you need to step in. The most important part of revenge arc content isn't the actual gym motivation, it's the means by which you get there. So how can we delay these young men from emotionally healing and looking for other, healthier ways of dealing with their emotions? Well, simply put, we want to keep reopening those old wounds that these young men have from their breakup. If you do it well, you can strike a delicate balance between preventing these young men from ever moving on while also continuing to promise that your content will help them move on. Here's an example that best exemplifies what I'm talking about.
I'm done with this. Have fun at the gym. You're never gonna be big like that David Lane guy or whatever. I'm fed up. Goodbye.
This YouTube short, produced by creator Harsh Dixit, has everything that makes the revenge arc such a potent form of content. You have the reel beginning with someone who at least appears to have a good physique, intercut with text that seem to summarize a relationship going sour. This is overlaid with a voicemail from the presumed ex that he's getting revenge on, telling him, and by extension us, the audience, that we're never going to be one of the greats, that we'll never be big and we'll never make it. So what you have in this short is a 3-step process. You have the reminder of a heartbreak that hopefully is still quite fresh for your audience, reopening old wounds and not allowing them to heal. You then take that sadness that you've inflicted on your audience and twist it into motivation for revenge. This is where that voicemail becomes important. It doesn't matter how manufactured or scripted this voicemail actually is, all we need to focus on is making these young men feel like they've been wronged by their relationship ending. We want to fuel them with enough spite towards their exes to then use as motivation to get into the gym. And then, of course, the video loops back around to the start where we can see the reward of this spiteful outlook, the revenge that's been taken. In this case, the pretty good physique that you'll have developed because of this revenge you're taking. Or at least what appears to be a good physique, because part of making revenge arc videos is to turn your camera exposure all the way down. But of course, the most important element of this video comes at the end, where Dixit encourages his viewers to follow to stay angry. And that marriage of spite and motivational content, and the blurring of boundaries between the two, is what's really going to help your online fitness brand. After all, we don't really need to help these young men in the long run. So long as you foster a dependency on your content by creating negative emotions and then offering fitness as a solution to them, you'll never fail to get people working out as a means of escaping the heartbreak that you won't let them heal from, and returning to you for motivation to keep doing so. And there you have it. With just a few simple choices, You too can create an army of young men who are entirely dependent on you for a sense of purpose. They have to be, because you'll have basically guaranteed that they have no other reason to continue lifting, other than as a means of feeling in control over the world that you turned them against. Pretty cool, right? But there's a question that I'm sure a lot of you have. Now that we've done all of this and successfully got these boys focusing on nothing other than the gym, where do we go from here? What are we going to do with this army of young men that we've created who feel entitled to some greater purpose or ideal but can't seem to reach one? How can we use, to our benefit, their resentment towards the world they live in? How can we exploit their paradoxical sense of superiority to others that's also deeply clouded by an inferiority complex towards those same people they're supposed to be better than? And the answer to all of these questions is rather simple. You have to give these young men a purpose. You have to tell them what they need to do in order to fix not just themselves, but the world around them. If you do that, you'll have secured these boys' loyalty forever. You need to offer them a solution to the modern world they live in and all of the problems that it represents to them. And the only solution to modernity is tradition. The past is an extremely powerful weapon when giving these young men something to strive towards. To start with, everyone has an idea of tradition, a better time in the past that serves for these boys as an escape from the modern world and its ills that we won't let them escape from. Thanks to the idea of tradition, these boys now have an escape. They now have hope. Of course, what they're hoping for isn't anything concrete. Rather, we're selling them the idea of a better past. These boys can't travel back in time, thank God, so they have to rely on us to tell them what tradition is, tell them the ideals that they should be living up to. In the case of your online fitness brand, it's simple. All you have to do is tell them that their pursuit of fitness, their dependency on the gym, isn't some byproduct of the misery you've instilled in them, but a virtue, a noble pursuit of a long-lost ideal that the world needs once more. You could, for instance, create a YouTube channel that serves the sole purpose of reminding your audience of all the problems that modernity now poses. You want to have an easy to recognize fitness mascot as your profile picture so that people can see immediately what you're all about. Something like the Giga Chad. Now they know we mean business. Then all you need is a brand name, something that advertises your fitness but also paints it as having some form of unique or exotic twist. Maybe something to do with the region you're from and the associations held with the masculinity that's found there. For instance, if you're from the Balkans, you could call yourself Balkan Gains. Of course, branding is 90% of the battle. Once you have your recognizable channel, you can churn out whatever motivational slop you want so long as it confirms the biases of the young men in your audience. For instance, let's say you wanted to capitalize off your audience's sense of disgust towards fat people that you've ingrained into them. Thanks to the wonders of traditionalism, this is no longer representative of the individual but of a greater trend in the modern world, a symptom of modernity. And now that you've introduced the problem, you now offer a solution. In this case, cutting from how things are to how you say they should be, using editing to introduce fitness and, by extension, traditionalism as a solution to the problems that modernity poses. You're essentially using montage editing to create mini propaganda films, causing your viewers to reject the problems caused by modernity and embrace the traditional solution. And the great thing about having such a simple format is that it's almost universally applicable. Just rebuke whatever problem you see with a video of a golden age bodybuilder working out and you've already won. For example, this video titled "Reject Modern Feminism, Embrace Manliness."
I like to joke about the man box, which is like, you can only be a man if you fulfill these certain qualities and you stay within this square of like, you're in your man box and you're safe in the man box. And something about, for some men, about going near feminism is a step out of the man box.
Because they know it's just so fragile.
It
It's
is
gonna fall
fragile,
apart.
I know. It's going to fall apart.
They need to hold that box
identity
together.
structure, you know? Definitely.
Now, some of you might think it's a bit ironic that in order to argue against the criticism of strict masculine ideals, you would then go on to rely on those same strict masculine ideals to prove yourself right. But this is a necessary step in maintaining our hold over these young men. We don't want them thinking about the expectations we have them under. We don't want them thinking about other ways of pursuing masculinity other than what we've given them. We simply want to keep upholding the same ideas of masculinity and tradition that we fed them, and that they think are going to fix their problems. You have to keep them locked inside the man box. And if you can convince these young men in your audience that this is the only way forward, if you can tell these young men that there's no other way, some of them will step right into that box and throw away the key themselves. And after that, you can get them to embrace just about anything. Like having them aspire to be as masculine as anime characters. Now, thanks to your montages, they can equate watching anime and saying, "God, I wish that were me," to being motivated to actually make something of themselves. But let's say that having these young men aspire to be a cartoon character is a bit too silly for your preference. Let's say you want these videos to have real-world applications. I've got you covered. You could, for example, conflate the masculinity you've taught these boys to pursue with something like patriotism, or more specifically, militarism. The army is pretty manly after all, so go ahead, throw some World War II footage in your video about manliness. After all, it's in the past, so it technically counts as traditional. Now, there's no way Emma Watson can criticize the narrow expectations of masculinity you've held your audience to. After all, you have war and violence on your side, not like those modern feminists who want to move you away from tradition. And hey, since we're glorifying the sheer masculine power of nation-state militaries, we may as well glorify the ones that look manly or cool, right? So go on, reject the soft, weak, degenerate NATO who's only focused on pride, and embrace true strength, true masculinity in the form of the Russian military. And that's really the beauty of everything we've done up until this point. In manufacturing an audience of young men who are filled with resentment towards the modern world, weakness, progressivism and degeneracy, who look to the aesthetics of masculinity, power and tradition as a means of escape or fixing the problem, we've guaranteed that these young boys won't even realize that they've fallen for military propaganda, because it appeals to the biases that we've spent the last few steps painstakingly instilling in them. We've essentially groomed them into accepting our dogma. And now you might be wondering how I devised this framework that I've outlined. You're probably wondering what makes me such an expert on creating movements that young men will live and die by. And this is where I have to come clean and admit that I didn't totally come up with this myself. I actually found a really cool guide that explains how, in just 14 simple steps, you too can create an audience who's totally dedicated to your every word. So I wanted to close off by explaining these steps and how you too can create your own dedicated fan base who will live and die by your every word. The first thing that you want to do is appeal to some sense of social frustration in your audience. So in the case of fitness, this could be an insecurity towards their physique, how they compare to their peers, or even how women view them. Anything that you perceive as a vulnerability or insecurity in your audience, you need to present fitness as a solution to. This is more easily done by convincing them that there exists some form of plot against them. Think women being out to get them, the woke left trying to feminize men by telling them that masculinity is bad, or the government poisoning them with the quality of food that they're given. You want them to feel besieged at all angles. Any way that you can get these boys feeling persecuted is vital for reaching the next step. This being selective populism. Now that these boys feel like the world around them is out to get them, they're far more likely to form communities based around a few select figures to act as a voice for the people. This is where you and your fitness brand step in and offer them refuge from the alienation they feel. Tell them that they're among like-minded people and that this is where they belong. You can better accomplish this by utilizing newspeak, canned phrases or expressions that your audience can use to demonstrate their loyalty to the cause you've started. Something like "we go gym" or "talking like a caveman who discovered happiness after lifting heavy things" is a great example of this. It highlights the importance that working out represents for these young men, but prevents deeper analysis as to why they're so compelled to work out all the time. This being that we've convinced them that there's no other way to stay happy. All these boys should have left is the gym, and the community of boys who also only have the gym. Of course, now that these boys are finally in the in-group for once, they shouldn't want to let it go. You want them to feel like they have to maintain their standing within this new group by attacking anybody outside of it. You want them to have a fear of difference, be it fat people, soy boys. You want these young men to meet anything that doesn't conform to their newfound standards with outright contempt. After all, anything other than fitness represents weakness, and you want your audience to hate weakness. And this is useful in two ways for our fitness movement. First, it provides our audience motivation to stay within the movement. They see how the other side lives, as helped by your reels making fun of fat people for accepting themselves, and feel a deep sense of disgust and desire to avoid being like that. And second, it allows them a newfound sense of superiority over those not enlightened like they are. These young men in your audience have put in the work to become fit, and as such are better than anyone who hasn't. You want to feed the superiority complex you've instilled in them and have them keep coming back for more. Of course, you don't want these young guys getting too big for their boots, because then they'll start thinking they don't need to rely on you and your movement anymore. So you have to present these outsiders as simultaneously weak enough to feel superior to, but also strong enough that they pose a serious threat to these boys' newfound masculinity. The enemy has to be weak and strong at the same time. For instance, let's say you want these young boys to feel threatened by someone they look down on, like a skinny guy. The most efficient way to do this is to highlight that despite his physical inferiority, he's still getting the girl that your audience liked, something you can explain to them in great detail. This cuckold fantasy allows you to target your audience's power, or lack thereof, in sexual situations. You're essentially depriving them of power in their sexuality, forcing them to reclaim it by enacting traditional masculinity or machismo. It's also important because it contributes to their disdain and resentment towards women, and more specifically non-standard sexual behavior. That's something we want to manufacture a deeply visceral, deeply personal disdain for if we want to foster a rejection of what all of this represents to these young men. In this case, modernity. And of course, what other option do these boys have in the face of modernity and all of the problems it poses than to fight back? In this case, fighting is defined by the endless pursuit of fitness that you've sent these boys on. You've convinced them that no matter what they do, they will always be fighting an uphill battle. They will always be looked down on by the rest of society. They will always struggle, thanks to us, and it is that struggle that these boys' lives are now defined by. We keep reopening their old wounds because it gives them continual motivation to work out, to feel like they're fixing the problem. These boys should exist in a state of permanent warfare, never stopping to consider why they're fighting or who they benefit by fighting, but rather uncritically taking action, working out and focusing on self-improvement in an endless loop, taking action simply for action's sake. This will feed into the hero complex that you want your audience to have. The idea that in taking this action, working out in order to spite modernity and be the best version of themselves, that they're fulfilling some greater purpose, living up to some greater ideal, even at the cost of their own lives. Maybe there's a common martyr like Z's who did die in the pursuit of fitness, who these young men can now rally around as a representation of what ideals they think they're working out for. You don't even have to pay attention or accurately represent how he actually lived his life. You just have to co-opt the image of a dead man in order to further your own agenda. In this case, demonstrating that there's a hero in all of us. And of course, that heroism tied to a long dead great leader in a past your audience wishes to return to, loops us back around to the most important step in this process. This, of course, being the cult of tradition that you want these young boys to accept. In viewing masculinity as some long dead mindset or art, you compel your audience to wish for its return, or to return to a time where masculinity embodied the higher ideals you've convinced your audience to dedicate themselves to. In this case, Hellenistic or Roman masculinity and fitness are great standards to hold your viewers to in order to make them want to return to the past. And of course, having fostered this attitude of needing to save the world by returning to traditional masculinity, having portrayed the perils of modernity as a world-ending calamity, you've removed all nuance from the conversation. You're either with us, the saviors of traditional masculinity and possibly also the world, or against us, and therefore part of the problem. You've upped the stakes of fitness to the point that disagreement or criticism is equivalent to treason. And there you go. By following these 14 steps, you too can inspire dedication to just about anything you decide to talk about. Fitness, movies, hell, even video games. Any problem you tackle can be blown up to the most important issue in the world if you stick to these 14 core principles. And now you might be thinking, Data Mail, those 14 steps you listed are actually Umberto Eco's 14 characteristics of Urfascism. And that may be true, but let me tell you this in response. I don't care. Why should I? I'm trying to gain a successful platform. It's not my job to be responsible with it. Is it really my fault if, in making these boys dedicated to my brand, that I instill in them the same qualities that make people openly embrace fascism? I'm trying to create a dedicated fan base here. I'm trying to make sure that they get into the gym and work on themselves. If self-improvement is fascist, then well, I guess fascism is pretty based. After all, look at all of the fat people I've cherry-picked as the alternative to fascism. Seems like we only really have one choice, don't we? Besides, everything is fascist nowadays. Typical of these soy boys to call everything they disagree with Hitler. Who was this guy? Umberto Eco? A philosopher? A cultural critic? Really? Sounds like a weak, liberal, science-based lifter to me, too focused on reading and literature to actually get into the gym and do something practical or work hard on something for once. How much could Umberto Eco bench anyway? Yeah, that's what I thought. Opinion discarded. If you want to continue the success of your online fitness brand, make sure to tear away every opportunity for happiness these young men might have in favour of putting them in the gym. That's how we teach them how to be a real man, by perpetually outrunning the misery that we're keeping them in for monetary gain. You really want to make sure not to donate to charities like the ones I linked in the pinned comment below, which foster healthy forms of masculinity or good mental health outreach for men, or demonstrate good role models for young boys to follow. You also really want to avoid sharing positive masculine role models in the comments below. That's probably the worst thing you could do for online brands like the ones I discussed throughout this video, because it might allow these young men a healthy alternative to the hatred you've spent all that time ingraining in them. So be sure to avoid donating to those charities or sharing those alternative YouTubers if you want to continue these young boys' dependence on the negativity that we feed them. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and enable notifications, and consider throwing some money at my Patreon for an exclusive preview of my upcoming projects. Until next time, cheers.